Perfect pitch, singing in tune, Autotune, Charlie Puth, Super Bowl controversy. What's going on? I want to talk a little bit about a very common misperception of what perfect pitch is. And this has come to light because of the sort of discussion that I see going on about the controversy or the debate surrounding Charlie Puth's performance of the national anthem in this year's Super Bowl. Now, I'm going to confess, as a diehard Denver Broncos fan, when my beloved Broncos were eliminated from contention, I had to take a little breaky poo. And I did not watch this year's big game. Though I congratulate the Seattle Seahawks, who are the home team by proxy of my new home, Portland, Oregon. And so, congratulations, Seahawks, on your victory. Better luck next year, Broncos. Let's go. All right, but so I did not hear Charlie Puth perform the national anthem, and so I've heard that on the one hand it was a good rendition, but on the other hand, from people who know what they're hearing, there's this kind of growing, this sort of growing murmur of, hey, I hear like the telltale artifacts of pitch correction, live autotune in this. Is Charlie Puth using live autotune? And other people saying, silly rabbit, Charlie Puth has perfect pitch. He doesn't need autotune. When you say something like that, then I know that you don't necessarily know what perfect pitch is and isn't, what it's good for and what's not, and how it differs from singing in tune in general. So, and I think that's common. I think a lot of people are confused about what perfect pitch is, and they conflate it with singing in tune. They'll describe a great singer as having perfect pitch. Perfect pitch is exceedingly rare, and honestly, probably not very helpful, really, truth be told. Perfect pitch, this is a statistic I learned in college, so take it for what it's worth. Perfect pitch, about 1 in 10,000 people have perfect pitch. Something like that. Less than 1%. It's a rare skill, or a rare ability, I should say. What is it? As opposed to the fact, singing in tune is a fairly common skill among decent singers, but lots of people can sing in tune. It's kind of table stakes for being a professional singer, or even just a good singer. For you to audition and be in a choir, you're not going to be a professional singer, but they're basically testing, among other things, can you sing in tune? That's what you got to be able to do that at the very minimum. Other things you can kind of learn along the way through rehearsal, through practice, get a little better at, improve. Even your singing in tune you can get better at over time. But what is perfect pitch? This is my definition. I think it's probably pretty close to the official definition. Perfect pitch is the ability to either recall, or aka produce, or identify an exact pitch without an external reference. So what's that mean? An external reference is, like, I couldn't give you an A right now, an A440, the 440 hertz A, that is the A we tune a guitar to, or use sort of as a standard reference tune. I couldn't give that to you without plucking this string. And now I've got it in my ear and I could replicate it and sing in tune from it. But what if my guitar has gone a little bit flat on the wall? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. So perfect pitch would be, I wouldn't have needed to do that. I would have a reference pitch. I've known one person personally in my life who had perfect pitch. Perfect pitch, she also is anecdotally the reason that I believe that it is something that can be trained, especially at a young age. And I understand also from, kind of being curious about her experience, a little bit of at least one of the mechanisms by which it works, which is kind of a form of muscle memory. So my friend Jan in high school had perfect pitch, which she had developed or trained as a child, kind of learning to play the violin and viola. And it manifested there in college. Like I could, I could sit at a piano and she couldn't see my hands, and I could play a note and she could identify which note that was. Conversely, she could produce a middle C out of thin air without a reference, which is somewhat useful, I suppose, in certain situations. Now, she described it as a curse, and I totally understand why it would be, because one of the most difficult things to put in tune, and something that in practical terms, you don't sit down and do this. Someone has to come and, you have to schedule someone to come and tune a piano. Tuning a piano, which has 88 keys, many of the keys have multiple strings attached to that note, all of which have to be perfectly in tune with each other, and each adjustment you make, affects all the others. It's a whole process. You sit down at a piano, you accept what tune it's in. And stringed instruments in general, over time, go a little flat. The strings relax, they stretch out, the pitch goes down. So you sit at a piano, and in some practice room in our high school, me and Jan, and she would sit down because she could play piano, and this piano would be a little out of tune, and it would just feel uncomfortable. It would grate against this inner ear, this inner pitch, this inner perfect pitch that she had. It would grate against it. That middle C is off. And there's actually quite a lot of distance between the notes on a piano. There's a lot of tonal distance that you can fudge between the notes. It's measured in 100 cents of pitch between two half steps, between one note and the adjacent, the closest note to it on the piano. Anyway, that aside, perfect pitch is this exceedingly rare ability to, out of thin air, either produce an exact pitch or identify an exact pitch. It is not a prerequisite for singing in tune. Singing in tune is the development of your ear, the development of your voice to be relatively in tune to the music that surrounds you, or to be stable in tune to an a cappella piece of music, like singing the national anthem by yourself without accompaniment. That you're going to stay in the same key that you started because you sing in tune. It is difficult to do. Not everybody can do it. It is a skill that can be acquired, cultivated, improved, that you can get better and better at that over time, and that at a certain point you've kind of put in your 10,000 hours, as it were, and it's like something that you can count on about yourself is that you sing in tune. But even people who sing in tune are not absolutely perfect. And that we're used to kind of the fudge factor of, for instance, when someone sings and has a vibrato, the pitch is actually wavering around a center. It's a little bit sharp, a little bit flat, a little bit sharp, and we kind of like that sometimes. If they bend a pitch, it's kind of moving, up or moving down. We kind of like that sometimes. So, but having perfect pitch doesn't mean that you can execute. So the sort of debate that's going on that I see, as I think I mentioned earlier, is people saying, I hear Charlie Puth using what I feel is Autotune, sort of a digitized version, a computer assisted, pitch correction in real time. It's taking your vocal imperfections and nudging them into line so that they are exactly in tune, which is a little bit unnatural, as it turns out. at least to this current generation of people, that can sound to someone like me, that sounds unnatural. And there are these artifacts that kind of give it away that it's being used. And sometimes it is being hidden. Sometimes it's a correction that's applied in the studio when someone has sung something and they weren't quite in tune, and it's deemed by whoever's making a decision there, producer or the artist themselves, that, oh, we need to fix that. I don't want that to go. Everything else was fine. I don't want that to go out. Like, this version and this album version of the song needs to be sort of put forth as the perfect version. So let's nudge the pitches where I'm a little flat. Let's nudge them back to where they should be. That's a correction that gets used a lot. And I have some feelings about that, but I'll get to that later. But in any event, to return to Charlie Puth, which I don't really want to make this be a video about that because I don't have much to say, here's the bottom line. Both things are true. Charlie Puth does have perfect pitch. He does have the ability to either identify or produce an exact pitch from within, without an external reference. Also, Charlie Puth used some version of Autotune or live pitch correction in his performance of the national anthem. I'm going to take that from an analysis by Wings of Pegasus, who has made kind of a a significant portion of a significant series of videos making excellent technical analyses of whether or not people are using pitch correction or backing tracks, vocal assistance with live performances. And as he states in that analysis, fairly early on in that analysis, it's not actually a mystery. Charlie Puth is on record very openly about using Autotune live. What? But Charlie Puth has perfect pitch. Why would he use Autotune? Because Charlie Puth, for whatever reason, just having perfect pitch does not mean that you have a perfect throat, you have a perfect voice, you have the ability to perfectly land exactly on, and he must want to for stylistic reasons, or it sounds like his natural voice is probably excellent, and I would argue doesn't need to do that but wants to do that for aesthetic or other reasons. Okay, so let me bridge from that into what I think about this. So personally, I'm old school, and I favor organic things in general musically. I favor conversation, I favor performances that are a little more live than layered, as I've talked about. I favor, things that happy accidents that kind of sound okay. I favor leaving a few blemishes, leaving your blemishes in when they're not egregious. That is not to say that I never correct things. I do correct things in my studio recordings, because I'm not perfect, and sometimes there comes a point where a mistake, I avail myself of the current technology and even the technology that's existed since the 60s to simply I had a whoopsie daisy here at this one moment. Let me just punch that word. So I'll give you an example of something that most of my vocals come from a live performance and are typically 90% or 90 to 100% the live performance as it occurred. But occasionally I have to swallow when I didn't want to, or I, miss a word in my own song. I forget a lyric and think, this was great, except I forgot. I sung the wrong word this one place. So occasionally I will fix that word in the studio later. I'll overdub just this one section. As it rolls by, I will, I'll create a second track here in the studio where I'm like using a similar microphone and I'm matching it up so it sounds as smoothly similar as possible. And that word rolls by, and the hyper precise punch that I've set up in my DAW lets me punch in the word that it needed to be, and then I move on. So I'm not above corrections, but I'm against pitch correction. I told Sean, our bass player, who has taken over production duties, mostly the mixing duties and the final production duties from me, because he's much better at it. I told him, hey, I never want you to use any pitch correction on my voice. I will always give you a vocal, final vocal that I'm happy with. And if you think that I need to reconsider it, let's talk. And if I have to, I'll do. If I agree with you, I'll do something over. But never fix me, because I just don't want to have. I never want to hear that artifact on my voice. I never want to. I'm proud of the vocal I put forth. So I'm against using pitch correction in general. I'm in favor of organic voices. I think the voice is, I'm biased, but I think the voice remains the heart of every song, really. It's the most important instrument. It's the most important thing to get right. It's the most personal thing. It's the most expressive thing. It's the most evocative instrument. And I think that part of the beauty of the human voice is its imperfection. And I think we readily accept that. And I think it's a mistake to chase something else that doesn't actually exist in our experience and to make that the norm. I think it's a mistake within our industry to lower that bar as we think we're raising that bar, to make more and more of what you hear the norm be these sort of sanitized, pitch-corrected versions of things. I think that's a mistake personally. I think that I hope that at some point we have a 180 and we kind of, go back into a new era of more of the skill, more of the organic experience, more of the emotional experience of true music and the true expression of music, and a rediscovery of how that feels and how that makes us feel. Because I think that's the most beautiful thing. I think that's far more beautiful than this sort of sterile. Yeah, it's exactly pitch correct, but it just feels a little less real. It feels a little more lifeless. Feels a little less human, frankly. So anyway, Charlie Puth, God bless you, and congratulations on being able to sing the national anthem. It sounds like you are, from what I've seen of you when you perform, you absolutely have the option to not use pitch correction live, and I don't think you should. I don't think anybody should. I think that you should sing. It's not that hard to sing in tune. Like I said, it's table stakes, and it's achievable by all kinds of people at all kinds of ages. And the joy of singing and the skill of singing is something that we all can learn without much fuss, just by diving in and doing it. So, till next time, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have perfect pitch. Just get out there, sing your song, and express yourself. All right, till next time.